Hey everyone. Before I delve headlong into this video, I wanted to talk about a couple things. First, I slept wrong and my lower back and mid back are in a lot of pain. And when this is in pain for me, this is in pain because it's all connected. So my back and head are in a significant amount of pain, but I'm going to work through it because this is something I need to do. So this setup will be changing and I will sit in a more comfortable chair, well, comfortable in quotations. And then secondly, I actually began recording this last night and I got about 5 minutes in and just stopped. The voice in my head, the negative bad voice in my head was just screaming at me. It was saying this is stupid, this is dumb, this is embarrassing, this is foolish, and just delete it all. Delete the page, delete the videos, just everything, and save yourself some humility and move on. And while I didn't delete everything, I did stop recording because I second guessed myself. And I woke up today and after dinner I checked my messages, and on Facebook I had a voice messages from a friend, and it was basically her sharing her story with me briefly, and that someone out there could relate, that she could identify with what I was saying in her own way. And of course I'm going to respect her privacy, but I wanted to say thank you to her for that, because when I woke up today I had no plans on really recording this and wasn't sure when I would find the gumption to do it. And after I sat on video and talked about finding the courage to do it, it's kind of funny how quickly courage can just dissipate in the face of the stuff going on in your head. It's really interesting how you can find inspiration in places you wouldn't expect. So waking up today and hearing my friend's story and hearing her share her very personal experiences, coming from someone who is also a very private person from what I gather, to share that with me, it meant more than words can say. So I think that was the kick in the pants I needed to do this, so we will be off and running. And without further ado, let's get into part 2, the accident. Hi again, everyone. As you can see, we are in a completely different room now. We are in the living room because this is the most comfortable chair for me to sit in the entire apartment. This is a lawn chair I found at the recycling center, and cheap is free is always the way to go. It is being held together by duct tape and dreams, which I think adequately describes my life. Yeah, so we're here now. I'm recording on my phone and the lav mic for the first time ever for both. I have the Curse of Electronics, which is something I will document in the future because I want to see if anyone else has that as well. So I'm expecting this to not work at all or something to go horribly wrong, and I will be getting up periodically to make sure that the phone is still on because I have just horrible luck. So enough rambling about that. Let's get into the part 2 of what's wrong with me, question mark, the big question mark, and that is the accident. Well, the first accident, technically, but the accident, as far as being the catalyst that pretty much shaped my entire existence up until now, over the last decade. So to give some backstory, in April of 2009, I was living in Phoenix. I had been living there for about 5 years. And it was It was a fun 5 years. Phoenix is a very interesting but dynamic city at the same time. And I've lived in a lot of cities all over the continental US. I was working at a Blockbuster Video as a store manager back when those still existed. And the goal was, well, I was kind of a nomad in that every few years I would just move to a new city because I didn't see the point in staying in one place for a long time. I've always subscribed to that you have one conscious existence on this planet, cram as much into it as possible. And I didn't understand why you would want to live in the same exact house or city or whatever your entire life when there's an entire world to see. I had been in Phoenix, as I said, for 5 years, so I was definitely feeling the itch to move. It was beyond my expiration date as far as Phoenix went. And I decided that Chicago was going to be the next city that I moved to. I lived in Chicago many, many moons ago. After high school, I kind of was a nomad then too, but a more like hardcore nomad where I travel from place to place to place to place more frequently. But I wanted to go back to Chicago because I really enjoyed that city a lot. Being that I was a store manager at Blockbuster, I was making decent money. I decided to, and I knew in advance that I was going to move eventually, so I just started saving. And in about 4 years, I was able to save $15,000 to move to Chicago. I thought that'd be enough to cover the move and getting a new apartment and transferring to a new store, back when there were actually stores to transfer for Blockbuster. So yeah, I had quite a bit of money, to me, quite a bit of money saved. So that was the plan, was to eventually move to Chicago and continue on with my life. As said, Phoenix was a great city. I saw more concerts while living in Phoenix than I had in my entire life previously. They are still in frames on my wall in the bedroom of all my adventures going to shows. In addition, I met so many friends and coworkers that I'm still friends with to this day. Many of them were through Blockbuster, so if you're watching this, hey. And overall, it was a really, really fun time in my life, but I knew it was time to move on to newer pastures. And I preface the entire story with this because that's the groundwork for where my life was at the time and what the plan was at the time. That was the future plan. And I always had a plan. And I always had a backup plan and a backup for the backup. But then sometimes things happen in your life and everything changes like that. So that brings us to the accident. So I was in the car with my ex. They were not my ex at the time. They are now. And we were out getting toiletry items. And the reason why is kind of silly to a lot of people, including lawyers and cops and the people I've dealt with over the years after this incident. But basically, ever since I was a little kid, like 7, 8 years old, my dream has been to go to a WrestleMania. I've been a wrestling nerd since that age, since before that age, really. I was 5 or 6 when I started watching wrestling, and it's something I still watch to this day. And I know it's corny and it's not cool, and you get made fun of for it a lot, and it's something you just learn to deal with and live with, I guess, as being a fan. So yeah, so we were out grabbing items, as I said, for the trip. WrestleMania was WrestleMania 25 in Houston that year. I've traveled the country up to then 5 times. I've been to almost every single state. And again, the one consciousness on this earth kind of thing. And so driving from Phoenix to Houston was no sweat. You know, drive there a day early, stay in a hotel, go to Mania, stay in a hotel, come back. So we were out getting supplies for that trip. Oh, my neck just popped. All right, y'all. Full disclosure, I just got up to check the phone to make sure it was still on, and my back of my neck, what I call the bump area, just popped really hard. So the pain is going to be immediate and intense, but I'm going to go on. Where was I at? Okay, so me and my ex were in the car, and sorry, just give me 1 second. I'll jump forward in time. All right, I'm gonna try and go on. I was already dealing. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this, is because this happens all the time, and it's stuff like this is why I'm not healing. So it's gonna tighten up, like if all the moisture was sucked out of your head, and it's gonna throb. both where it popped and then it always goes up to the back of my cranium, which I hadn't anticipated talking about, but I hadn't anticipated my neck popping as I sat back down. So just bear with me, please. I'm hoping that if I get enough momentum in the story, then I'll just kind of focus on that instead of this, which is really starting to hurt. So me and Max were in the car. I was in the passenger seat, but in hindsight, it was also weird that I was even going on the trip because I usually stayed at home while they went and ran the errands. And remember this time I was like, yeah, I'll go along, sure. I don't know why. It was out of character. Yeah, to this day, I don't understand why I went, because I usually don't. I don't know. I wish I hadn't, but that's neither here nor there now. So we're out getting the supplies, as said, and we're stopped at a stoplight on two of the busy roads in Phoenix. And there's a stoplight, and then there's a red truck, and then there's us in my car behind him. And that was it. I was in the passenger seat because that's kind of what I preferred, but I remember looking at the clock rather, and it was 11:59. And then accident happened. After the accident, I remember looking at the clock again, and it was midnight. So I kind of jokingly say that the accident happened on midnight, exactly midnight. I can't prove that, but the timing was really close. So, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm there, and this is why I brought my friend who's gonna be me. So this is gonna be my avatar, since I can't make the motions anymore, because I can't even get up and sit down without hurting myself. So we are at the stoplight, as said. I apologize I'm sorry. And this is me in the passenger seat, and I look over like, oh, it's 11:59, how cool. And I look over and I'm talking to my ex, and I don't know what we were talking about, but I assume it was about the trip, because I was super excited to go. And then as I'm talking, the loudest noise I'd ever heard in my life happened behind me. It was like a shotgun went off in the back seat. And that was the loudest noise I'd ever heard in my life up until a few years later when I was in a tornado. But up until then, that was the loudest noise I had ever heard. So there was this loud explosive noise, and we got sent forward all the way towards the truck in front of us, and I knew immediately that we had been rear-ended. And put my friend back down. And I get out of the car, and I am livid. I am beyond pissed. We were about half a car length behind the red truck in front of us. By the time the accident was done, we were within, I would say, centimeters of, we didn't hit the red truck, but we were close. That's how far ahead we got pushed. Not really realizing what was going on around me, because if you've been in an accident, you know how jarring they are, and you're just disoriented. And it's literally nerve-wracking because you're shaking and your body is trembling, and it's this adrenaline fear that is coursing through your body. So I managed to open up my door. Well, I tried to. I had to nudge it open. So I nudge open my door. I crawl out, and then the driver of the red truck is coming towards us, and he's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I sound like a gunshot went off." And I was like, "I think I'm fine. I'm fine." And I turn, and I saw the damnedest thing. Let me see if I'm gonna use some props here. We're gonna use the PlayStation controller and a remote for props. So this is our car. This is what happened. I see that a person's car is normally you're like this. They are like this. The front end of their car is underneath the back end of ours. And all the way to the windshield. I look up from that to the windshield, and I saw something I never thought I would see in my life. I saw someone asleep at the wheel. The driver was like this on the wheel. I'm gonna do the best I can. Was like this on the wheel, completely out cold. Not from the accident, just asleep. Here's why. Behind the wheel, and if the chair squeaks, I apologize, it's duct tape and dreams. The driver was a college student, a college girl, who gotten drunk. And she fell asleep at the wheel. And she fell asleep at the wheel with her foot on the gas. They clocked her later on. They used like fancy math to figure out like trajectory and distance and how far the collision under our car was to how far we were pushed up. They did math and clocked her going between 70 and 80 miles an hour with no skid marks because she didn't hit the brakes because she was asleep. So the accident that changed my life forever was that I got rear-ended by a drunk college girl going about 80, we're rounding up, 80 miles per hour, full speed, rear-ended into the back of us, and was so inebriated that she did not wake up from the crash. That, to me, is astounding, even to this day. Not just when I first saw it, which I was dumbfounded then, but yeah, that's how drunk you have to be to do that, is when you don't wake up from that kind of accident. So I get out of the car, and I am, as said, I am so mad. I was supposed to leave for my trip the next morning. My car is totaled. And I'm screaming expletives just left and right, and I'm so mad. And the crash didn't wake her up, but me screaming did. So when she wakes up, she lifts her head off of the steering wheel, and there's this biggest like thing of drool came with her, which is kind of when I realized then that she was actually asleep at the wheel, on the wheel. She just started freaking out, naturally. She's still gotta be super drunk. Like, you don't get sober even from an accident that quickly. So she starts freaking out and then starts screaming back at me to drive the car forward because she needs to move her car. I said, what? She screams again, pull your car forward, I need to drive away. I, in no uncertain terms, said, absolutely not. I don't think I said it like that, but that's pretty much what I said. And she just started screaming and crying in the car. The man in the truck had already called the cops, so they were on their way. I'm standing there just looking at the wreckage in disbelief. So I'm taking in the damage. Drunk college girl is freaking out in her car. She even tries to start it, believe it or not, and it would not. Her front end is buried under our back end. She's not going anywhere regardless, but it wouldn't start. I go sit on the curb as people are driving by and make sure we're okay. And that's one thing I will say about Phoenix is, I don't know if this is said enough, but I've been in situations, like for instance, one of the Blockbusters I was a manager of got robbed. And when things go down like that, the sense of community in Phoenix is astounding. It's really nice. It's better than my so-called small town, hometown values stuff. That would never happen where I grew up. Not like that. But there, like if something happened, people rallied around you. And that's what happened here. People were stopping, making sure we were okay. The whole nine. It was really cool. All right, I'm gonna check the camera again real fast. I'm letting you know right now, just in case something else happens to me. So I'm gonna check the camera, and I'll be right back. All right, I am back. That was a more successful attempt at checking the phone. I restarted the video from scratch because I don't know how much time the internal memory has. But yeah, if I ramble on about that stuff, I always over-explain, and it's been a fault of mine for many years. But I guess you don't know all the details, and I want you to know all the details. So yeah, if it's annoying, I apologize. Back to the accident. Okay, so the people there were great, and eventually the cops do show up, and they're taking our statement, and they take the girl off to this really interesting, like, mobile drunk tank thing that I didn't know existed before. It looks like an armored car, but way longer. Almost like if like an armored car and an RV had a baby, that's what this looked like. And it's where they put, like, I guess, drunk people, where they could do like the alcohol test there, and I guess it was kind of like a moving drunk tank kind of thing. They took her there, and I'm in tears by this point because like my childhood dream is just poof at the hands of someone reckless, not realizing that my entire future was also going to be the same thing. But at the time I didn't realize the severity of what had happened. The police officer, one of them, comes up and asks us out of nowhere, what happened to the other person in the car? And me and my ex looked at each other, and there was no other person in the car. It was just her. Are you sure? Yeah. I explained exactly how things went down, just as I explained it to you. You know, I was talking to my ex, and boom, car accident. Got out of the car, there she was. I was like, there was never a car door. I never heard footsteps running away. It was midnight in Phoenix. Even in Phoenix at midnight, it's not super loud. We would have heard all of that. So then he says, well, she's saying that her friend was behind the wheel, took off running after the accident, and she slid over to take her spot. Again, I relayed my story to him, just as it happened. You know, sitting there, talking to ex, boom, got out of the car, there she was. No car door, no footsteps, no nothing. He says, okay, so he goes back to the drunk tank thing. Comes back a few minutes later, and he says, well, there's nothing more we can do here. She is refusing to cooperate. She won't answer any more questions. And she was basically throwing a tantrum from what he was describing. When the story evolves more and you find out what happened later on down the line with the court case, I want you to remember all of this. Remember all of this. 'Cause I sure as heck did and do. The accident was so significant because of what happened during it. So I'll bring back out my avatar. When the accident happened, here's what happened to me. I was talking to my ex, and we get rear-ended, and so I go forward like this, but at the same time, it was like a duality thing. Like when you get whiplash, usually you're facing forward, you go like that. I was facing this way, so it went like that, but then also my neck snapped that way. So it was like, if I can do it without hurting myself, like that. It was like wham, back. And then when the back seat came to the front seat, I didn't realize at the time because of the impact, the back seat hit me again in the back of the head, because the back seat hit the back of the front seat and just sent me forward again. So it was like, I'm gonna do the slow motion. So it was like wham, back, boom, boom, back. That's what happened to me in the accident. Just a really quick boom, but it happened in a second. And so, yeah, I remember seeing my ex take the brunt. When the car hit, they went like this, because they were sitting there like this, boom, we get hit. They lurched forward and then like magically stopped themselves with the power of mimeness. They just, I can't do it, like the jerking, but it was just like, boom. But imagine that a lot faster. And they were fine. We were both wearing our seatbelts, in case anyone's wondering. I probably went through the windshield if I hadn't been. So yeah, that's what happened in the accident in Phoenix and what it did to me initially. And that was just off of that moment happening. What I found out later in the ensuing weeks and months to come, that's when everything changed. And I will cover that in the next video, which will be part 3, the aftermath in Phoenix. So thank you for listening, for watching. I know that everyone has stories, and people have been in worse accidents than me. If not for it being a decade later and still not being healed from that moment, from this moment that happened to me, I wouldn't be here now making this video. It's crazy to think that almost my entire 30s were robbed from me. You know, the time of your life when people say it's the best time of your life and you find out who you are and you're comfortable in your skin and it's the best years and all that. I never got to experience that because I've been in pain every single day, literally every single day for 10 years. Even now, I mean, I popped a vertebra sitting here talking to you. It's rough to think about that. I'm the age I am now, and a quarter of my life has been in chronic, agonizing pain. That's why I try not to think about it, and that's not what this is about right now, though. This is about just sharing that with you. So, again, thank you for watching and listening and all of that. All right, I'm gonna go take some headache powders now, and that's really all I have, and drink some chocolate milk. because it's comfort food. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next video.